That Nelson saw it was all bullshit gave him for Prue a certain seriousness. Across the plywood booth tables of the working man's type bar in North Akron they used to go to in her car — she had a car of her own, a salt-rotted old Plymouth Valiant, its front fender flapping like a flag, and this was another thing he liked about her being willing to drive such an ugly old clunker, and having worked for the money to pay for it. Nelson could tell he looked pretty good. In terms of the society she knew, he was a step up. And so was she, in terms of this environment, the local geography. Not only a car, but an apartment, small but all her own, with a stove she cooked her own dinners on, and liquor she would pour for him after putting on a record. From their very first date, not counting the times they were messing around with Melanie and her freaky SLDK friends, Prue had taken him back to her apartment house in this town called Stowe, assuming, without making any big deal of it, that fucking was what they were both after. She came with firm, quick thrusts that clipped him tight and secure into his own coming. He had fucked other girls before, but hadn't been sure if they had come. With Prue he was sure. She would cry out and even flip a little, like a fish that flashes to the surface of a gloomy lake. And afterwards, cooking him up something to eat, she would walk around naked, her hair hanging down her back to about the 6th bump on her spine, even though there were a lot of windows across the apartment courtyard she could be seen from. Who cares? She liked being looked at, actually, in the dancing spots they went to some nights, and in private let him look at her from every angle, her big smooth body like that of a doll whose arms and legs and head stayed where you set them. His intense gratitude for all this, where another might have casually accepted, added to his value in her eyes until he was locked in, too precious to let go of ever. Now she sits all day watching the afternoon soaps with Mom, and sometimes Mom, Search for Tomorrow on Channel 10, and then Days of Our Lives on 3, and back to 10 for As the World Turns, and over to 6 for One Life to Live, and then 10 again for The Guiding Light. Nelson knows the routine from all those days before they let him work at the lot. Now Prue farts because of some way the baby is displacing her insides, and drops things, and says she thinks his father is perfectly nice. He has told her about Becky. He told her about Jill. Prue's response is, "But that was long ago." Not to me, it is to him. He's forgotten the silly shit. Just to look at him, you can see he's forgotten. He's forgotten everything he ever did to us. The stuff he did to Mom, incredible, and I don't know the half of it, probably. He's so smug and satisfied is what gets me. If I could just once make him see himself for the shit he is, I maybe could let it go. What good would it do, Nelson? I mean, your father's not perfect, but who is? At least he stays home nights, which is more than mine ever did. He's gutless, that's why he stays home. Don't you think he wouldn't like to be out chasing pussy every night? Just the way he used to look at Melanie. It isn't any great love of Mom that holds him back, I tell you that. It's the lot. Mom has the whip hand now, no thanks to herself. Why, honey, I think from what I've seen your parents are quite fond of each other. Couples that have stayed together that long, they must have something. To dip his mind into this possibility disgusts Nelson. The wallpaper, its tangled pattern of things moving in and out of things, looks evil. As a child, he was afraid of this front room, where now they sleep, across the hall from the mumble of Mom's television. Cars passing on Joseph Street, underneath the bare maple limbs, wheel sharp-edged panels around the walls, bright shapes rapidly altering like in those computer games that are everywhere now. When a car brakes at the corner, a patch of red shudders across the wallpaper, and a pale framed print of a goateed farmer with a wooden bucket at some stone well. This fading print has always hung here. The farmer, too, had seemed evil to the child's eyes, a leering devil. Now Nelson can see the figure as merely foolish, sentimental. Still, the taint of malevolence remains, caught somewhere in the transparency of the glass. The red shudders and winks away. A motor guns, and tires dig out. Go. The fury of this unseen car escaping, becoming a mere buzz in the distance, gratifies Nelson vicariously. He and Prue are lying in the old sway-backed bed he used to share with Melanie. He thinks of Melanie, unpregnant, free, having a ball at Kent, riding the campus buses, taking courses in Oriental religion. Prue is dead sleepy, lying there in an old shirt of Dad's, buttoned at the breasts and unbuttoned over her belly. He had offered her some shirts of his. Now that he has this job, he has had to buy shirts, and she said they were too small and pinched. The room is hot. The furnace is directly under it, and heat rises. There's nothing they can do about it. Here it is, the middle of November, and they still sleep under a sheet. He is wide awake and will be for hours, agitated by his day. Those friends of Billy's are after him to buy some more convertibles, and though the old Delta 88 Royale did sell for $3,600 to that doctor, Dad says, and says Manny backs him up on this, that by the time you figure in the deductible on the insurance and the carrying costs, there really wasn't any profit. And now the Mercury is in the shop, though the insurance man wanted to declare it totaled. He said that would be simplest with a virtual antique like this, parts at a premium and the front end screwed up like somebody had done it deliberately. Manny estimates that the repair costs are going to come in $400 to $500 above the settlement check. They can't give you more than car book value. And when he asked Manny if some of the mechanics couldn't do it in their spare time, he said, looking so solemn, his brow all furrowed, and the black pores in his nose jumping out at you, "Kid, there is no spare time. These men come in here for their bread and butter," implying he didn't, a rich man's son. Not that Dad backs him up in any of this. He takes the attitude the kid's being taught a lesson and enjoys it. The only lesson Nelson's being taught is that everybody is out for their own little pile of dollars, and nobody can look up to have any vision. He'll show them when he sells that Mercury for $4,500 or so. He knows a lot of guys at the laid-back money like that is nothing to. This Iranian thing is going to scare gas prices even higher, but it'll blow over. They won't dare keep them long, the hostages. Dad keeps telling him how it costs $3 to $5 a day every day to carry a car in inventory, but he can't see why. If it's just sitting there on a lot you already own, the company even pays rent to itself, he's discovered, to gyp the government. Prue, beside him, starts to snore, her head propped up on two pillows, her belly shiny like one of those puffballs you find in the woods attached to a rotten stump. Downstairs, Mom and Dad are laughing about something. They've been high as kites lately, worse than kids, going out a lot more with that crummy crowd of theirs. At least kids have the excuse there isn't much else to do. He thinks of those hostages in Tehran, and it's like a pill caught in his throat, one of those big dry vitamins Melanie was always pushing on him when it won't go down or come up. Take a single big black helicopter in there on a moonless night, commandos with blackened faces, a little piano wire around the throats of those freaky radical Arabs. Ulg, arg. You'd have to whisper, women and children first, and lift them all away. Drop a little tactical A-bomb on a minaret as a calling card. Or else a tunnel or some sort of boring machine like James Bond would have. That fantastic scene in Moonraker when he's dumped from the plane without a parachute and free falls into one of the bad guys and steals his can't be much worse than hang gliding. By the moonlight, Prue's belly button is casting a tiny shadow. It's been popped like inside out. He never knew a pregnant woman naked before. He had no idea it was that bad. Like a cannonball that hit from behind and stuck. Once in a while they get out. They have friends. Billy Fosnot has gone back to Tufts, but the crowd at the laid-back still gathers, guys and these scumbags from around Brewer still hanging around, with jobs in the new electronics plants or some government boondoggle or what's left of the downtown stores. You go into Kroll's these days, where Mom met Dad in prehistoric days. You go in through that forest where Weiser Square used to be, and it's like the deserted deck of a battleship just after the Japs bombed Pearl Harbor. A few scared salesladies standing around, cut off at the waist by the on-sale tables. Mom used to work at the salted nut and candy section, but they don't have one anymore, probably figured out after 30 years and 6 people died of worms it wasn't sanitary. But if there hadn't been a nut counter, Nelson wouldn't exist, or would exist as somebody else, which doesn't make sense. He and Prue don't know all their friends' first names. They have first names like Case and Pam and Jason and Scott and Dodie and Lyle and Derek and Slim, and if you show up at the laid-back enough, you get asked along to some of their parties. They live in places like those new condos with stained rough planking walls and steep-pitched roofs like a row of ski lodges thrown up on the side of Mount Pemaquid out near the Flying Eagle, or like those city mansions of brick and slate, with lots of ironwork and chimneys that the old mill money built along the north end of Youngquist, or out beyond the car yards, and now are broken up into apartments where they haven't been made into nursing homes or office buildings for cutesy outfits like handcrafted leather shops and do-it-yourself framers and young architects specializing in solar panels and energy saving, and young lawyers with fluffy hair and bandit mustaches, along with their business suits, that charge their young clients a flat fee of $300, whether it's for a divorce or beating a possession rap. In these neighborhoods, health food stores have sprung up, and little, long restaurants in half-basements serving vegetarian or macrobiotic or Israeli cuisine, and bookstores with names like Karma Paperbacks, and little shops heavy on macrame and batik and Mexican wedding shirts and Indian silk and those drifter hats that make everybody look like the part of his head with the brain in it has been cut off. Old machine shops with cinder block sides now sell pieces of unpainted furniture you put together yourselves for these apartments where everybody shares. The apartment Slim shares with Jason and Pam is on the 3rd floor of a tall old house on the high side of Locust, blocks behind the high school, in the direction of Maiden Springs. A big bay of 3 4-paned windows overlooks the deadened heart of the city, where once the neon outlines of a boot, a peanut, a top hat, and a great sunflower formed a garland of advertisement above Weiser Square. Now only the Brewers' Trust beacons, trained on its own granite facade, mark the center of the downtown, 4 great pillars like 4 white fingers stuck in a rich black pie, the dark patch made by the planted trees of the so-called shopping mall. From this downtown, the standard sodium yellow lamps of the city streets spread outward, a rectilinear web receding down toward the curving river, and on into suburbs whose glow flattens to a horizon swallowed by hills that merge with the clouds of night. Slim's front bay windows have in their upper panes the stained glass transom lights, those simplified flowers of pieces of purple and amber and milky green that are, along with pretzels, brewer's pride. But the old floors of parquet oak have been covered wall to wall with cheap shag carpeting speckled like pimento, and hasty plasterboard partitions have divided up the generous original rooms. The high ceilings have been lowered to save heat and reconstituted in soft white panels of something like pegboard. Nelson sits on the floor, his head tipped back, a can of beer cold between his ankles. He has shared 2 joints with Prue, and the little holes in the ceiling are trying to tell him something. An area of them seems sharp and vivid and aggressive, like the blackheads on Manny's nose the other day. And then this look fades, and another area takes it up, as if a jellyfish of intensity is moving transparently across the ceiling. Behind him on the wall is a large grimacing poster of Ilya Nastasi. Slim belongs to a tennis club out next to the Hemingtown Mall and loves Ilya Nastasi. Nastasi is beaded with sweat, his legs thick as posts. Hairy, knotty posts. The stereo is playing Donna Summer, something about a telephone very loud. Out in the center of the room between Nelson and some potted ferns and broad-leaved plants like Mom used to have in that side room off the living room, he remembers sitting with his father, looking at them some day when an awful thing had happened, a thing enormous and hollow under them, while the leaves of the plants drank the sunlight, as these bigger plants too must do when the sun comes slanting in the tall bay windows. There is a space, and in this space Slim is dancing like a snake on a string with another skinny boy with a short haircut called Lyle. Lyle has a narrow skull with hollows at the back and wears tight jeans and some long-sleeved shirt like a soccer shirt with a broad green stripe down the middle. Slim is queer, and though Nelson isn't supposed to mind that, he does. He also minds that there are a couple of slick blacks making it at the party, and that one little white girl with that grayish kind of sharp-chinned Polack face from the south side of Brewer took off her shirt while dancing, even though she has no tits to speak of, and now sits in the kitchen with still bare tits getting herself sick on Southern Comfort and Pepsi. At these parties someone is always in the bathroom being sick or giving themselves a hit or a snort, and Nelson minds this too. He doesn't mind any of it very much. He's just tired of being young. There's so much wasted energy to it. He sees on the ceiling that the jellyfish intensity flitting across the holes is energy such as flows through the binary bits of computers, but he can't take it any further than that. At Kent he was curious about computer science, but in just the introductory course, Math 10061 in Merrill Hall, the math got to be too much for him. All those Jewish kids and Koreans with faces flat as platters just breezing along like it was plain as day what a function was. It didn't seem to be anything you could actually point to, just the general idea somehow of the equation, another jellyfish, but how to extract it out. It beat him. So he figured he might as well come home and share the wealth. His father was holding him on his lap that day, the sensation of a big, warm, sad-smelling body all around and under his has stayed with him along with the memory of a beam of sunlight eating into the crescent edge of a furry leaf in that iron table of green plants. It must have been around when Becky died. Mom can't last forever, and when she kicks the bucket that leaves him and Mom in charge of the lot, with Dad up front like one of those life-size cardboard cutouts you used to see in car showrooms before cardboard became too expensive. Those blacks mooching around so superior, that decided, cool way they have of saying hello, daring you to outstare them, not taking responsibility for anything, though, makes him itch with fury, though the joints should be working him around toward mellow by now. Maybe another beer. Then he remembers the beer between his knees. It's cold and heavy because it's full and fresh from Slim's fridge, and takes a sip. Nelson studies his hand carefully because it feels holding the can as though he has a mitten on. Why doesn't Dad just die? People that age get diseases. Then he and Mom. He knows he can manage Mom. He's not that young. He's turned 23. And what makes him feel foolish among these people, he's married. Nobody else here looks married. There is sure nobody else pregnant that it shows. It makes him feel put on display as a guy who didn't know better. To be fair to her, Prue didn't want to come out. She was willing to sit over there like one of these green plants basking in the light of the television set, watching The Love Boat and then Fantasy Island with poor old Mom. She's been fading lately. Dad and Mom used to sit home with her, but now, like tonight, they're out somewhere with that Flying Eagle crowd. Incredible how irresponsible grown-ups, so-called, get when they think they're ahead of the game. Mom has told him all about their crazy gold. Maybe he should have offered to stay home, him and Prue with Mom. She's the one with all the cards, after all. But by that time, Prue had gotten herself dolled up, thinking she owed Nelson a little social life, because he was working so hard and always housebound with her. Families, doing everything for each other out of imagined obligation, and always getting in each other's way. What a tangle. Then, once Prue got here and got a buzz on, the mad woman of Akron took over. She decided to play to the hilt the token pregnant woman, throwing her weight around, dancing in shoes she really shouldn't even be walking in, thick-soled, wedgy platforms held on by thin green plastic strapping, like that gimp the playground supervisors at the Mount Judge rec field used to have you braid lanyards for a whistle out of. There was even, he remembers, a way of weaving called butterflies. You could make a key holder this way, as if kids ever had keys to hold. Maybe she's doing it out of spite. But he has undergone an abandonment of his own, and enjoys watching her from a distance of his own through the smoke. She has flash, Prue, flash and glitter in this electric green beltless dress she bought herself at a new shop over on Locust, where the old retired people are being forced out by gentrification, the middle class returning to the cities. Sleeves, white as wings, lift when she whirls, and that cannonball of a stomach sticks out, tugging up her dress in front to show more of the orange elastic stockings the doctor told her to wear to save her young veins. Her shiny platforms can barely shuffle on the shag carpeting, but she leaves them on, showing she can do it, more spite at him. Her body, as if skewered through a spot between her shoulder blades, writhes to the music, while her arms lift green, and her fantastic long hair snaps in a circle again and again. Nelson cannot dance, which is to say he will not, for all dancing is standing in place and letting the devil of the music enter you, which takes more faith than he's got. He doesn't want to appear a fool. Now Dad would do it if he were here. Just like when Jill was there, he gave himself to Skeeter and never looked back, even when all the worst had happened. Such a fool, he really believes there is a God he is the apple of the eye of. The dots on the ceiling don't let Nelson take this glimpse higher than this, and he returns his eyes to Prue, painfully bright in the dazzle dress, its flow like a jewel turned liquid, her face asleep in the music above her belly, which is solid, and not hers alone, but also his. So he is dancing too. He hates for a second that in himself which cannot do it, just as he could not join in the flickering mind-play of computer science and college generally, and could not be the floating, easy athlete his father had been. The dark second passes, dissolved by the certainty that some day he will have his revenge on them all. Prue's partner for some of the dancing has been one of the sassy Brewer blacks, the bigger one, in bib overalls and cowboy boots, and then Slim comes out of a twirl over by the potted plants with Lyle, and swings into orbit with Prue, who keeps at it whether or not anybody is there, up and down, little flips of her hands and a head toss. Her face does look asleep, that hooked nose of hers sharp in profile. People keep touching her belly as if for luck. In spinning and snapping their fingers, their loose fingers trail across the sacred bulge where something that belongs to him too is lodged. But how to fend off their touches, how to protect her and keep her clean? She is too big. He would look like a fool. She likes the dirt. She came out of it. Once she drove him past her old home in Akron. She never took him in. What a sad row. Houses with wooden porches with old refrigerators on them. Melanie would have been better. Her brothers played polo. At least Prue should take off her shoes. He sees himself rising up to tell her, but in truth feels too stoned to move, obliged to sit here and mellow between the fluffy worms of the carpet and the wormholes of the ceiling. The music has gas bubbles in it, popping in the speakers, and Donna Summer's zombie voice slides in and out of itself, doubling, taking all parts. Stuck on you, stuck like glue. The fairy that Slim stopped dancing with offers Prue a toke, and she sucks the wet tip of the joint and holds it down deep without losing a beat of the music, belly and feet keeping that twitch. Nelson sees that to an Akron slum kid like this, Brewer is a city of hicks, and she's showing them all something. A girl he noticed before, she came here with some big red-faced clod who actually wore a coat and tie to this brawl, comes and sits in the floor beside Nelson under Ilianastasi and takes the beer from between his ankles to sip from it. Her smiling, pale, round face looks a little lost here, but willing to please. "Where do you live?" she asks, as if picking up with him a conversation begun with somebody else. "In Mount Judge?" He thinks that's the answer. "In an apartment?" "With my parents and my grandmother." "Why is that?" Her face shines amiably with sweat. She has been drinking too. But there is a calm about her he is grateful for. Her legs stretch out beside his in white pants that look radiant, where that jellyfish of strangeness moves across them. It's cheaper. He softens this. We thought no point in looking for a place until the baby comes. You have a wife? There she is. He gestures toward Prue. The girl drinks her in. She's terrific. You could say that. What does that tone of voice mean? It means she's bugging the shit out of me. Should she be bouncing like that? I mean the baby. Well, they say exercise. Where do you live? Not far, on Youngquist. Our apartment isn't near as grand as this. We're on the first floor back overlooking a little yard where all the cats come. They say our building might be going condo. That good or bad? Good if you have the money, bad if you don't, I guess. We just started working in town, and my man wants to go to college when we get our stake. Tell him forget it. I've been to college, and it's absolute horse poop. She has a pleasant, puffy look to her upper lip, and he's sorry to see, from the way she holds her mouth, that he's left her nothing to say. What do you work at? He asks her. I'm a nurse's aide in an old people's home. I doubt if you know it, Sunnyside out toward the old fairgrounds. Isn't it depressing? People say that, but I don't mind it. They talk to me. That's mostly what people want, company. You and this man aren't married? Not yet. He wants to get further along in life. I think it's good. We might want to change our minds. Smart. That chicken green out there got herself knocked up, and I had no choice. Not much answer to this, either. Yet the girl doesn't show boredom, like so many people do with him. At the lot, he watches Jake and Rudy prattle away, and he envies how they do it without feeling idiotic. This strange face hangs opposite his calmly, mildly attentive, the eyes a blue paler than you almost ever see, and her skin milky, and her nose slightly tipped up, and her gingery hair loosely bundled to the back. Her ears are exposed and pierced, but unadorned. In his stoned condition, the squarish white folds of these ears seem very vivid. You say you just moved to town, Nelson says. Where'd you move from? Near Galilee. Know where that is? More or less. When I was a kid, we went down there to the drag race strip a couple times. You can hear the engines from our place on a quiet night. My room is on the side, and I used to always hear them. Where we live, there's always traffic going by. My room used to be out and back, but now it's up front. Dear little ears, small like his, though nothing else about her is small especially. Her thighs really fill those bright white pants. What does your father do? He a farmer? My father's dead. Oh, sorry. No, it was hard, but he was getting along. He was a farmer, you're right, and he had the school bus contract for the township. Still, that's too bad. I have a wonderful mother, though. What's wonderful about her? In his stupidity, he keeps sounding combative, but she doesn't seem to mind. Oh, she's just very understanding, and can be very funny. I have these two brothers. You do? Yes, and she's never tried to make me feel I should back down or anything because I'm a girl. Well, why would she? He feels jealous. Some mothers would. They think girls should be quiet and smart. Mine says women get more out of life. With men, it's if you don't win every time, you're nothing. Some mama. She has it all figured. And she's fatter than I am, and I love her for that. You're not fat, you're just nice, he wants to tell her. Instead, he says, finish up the beer, I'll get us another. No, thanks. What's your name? Nelson. He should ask her hers, but the words stick. Nelson. No, thanks, I just wanted a sip. I should go see what Jamie's doing. He's in the kitchen with some girl. Who's showing her tits. That's right. My theory on that is, those that got real tits to show don't. He glances down. The vertical ribs of her russet knit sweater are pushed slightly apart as they pass over the soft, ample shelf there. Below that, the white cloth of her slacks, taut in wrinkles where belly meets thighs in a triangle, has a radiance that manifests the diagonal run of the threads, the way the cloth was woven and cut. Below that, her feet are bare, with a pinkness along the outer edge of each big toe, fresh from the pressure of her discarded shoes. The girl has been made to blush by this survey of her body. "What do you do since college, Nelson?" "I just veg out." "No, actually, I sell cars. Not your ordinary tacky cars, but special old convertibles that nobody makes anymore. Their value is going to go up and up. It has to." "Sounds exciting." "It is. Jesus, the other day in the middle of town I saw this white Thunderbird parked, with red leather seats. The guy still had the top down, though it's getting pretty cold, and I nearly flipped. It looked like a yacht. When they turned out those things, there wasn't all this penny pinching. Jamie and I just bought a Corolla. It's in his name, but I'm the one that uses it. There isn't any bus that goes out to the fairgrounds anymore, and Jamie has a job he can walk to, in this place that makes bug killers, you know. Those electric grids with a purple light that people put outdoors by their pools or barbecues." "Sounds groovy. Must be a slack season for him, though." "You'd think so, but it's not. They're busy making them for next year, and they ship all over the South." "Huh." Maybe they've had enough of this conversation. He doesn't want to hear any more about Jamie's bug killers. But the girl keeps going. She's relaxed with him now, and so young everything is new to her. Nelson guesses she's 3 or 4 years younger than he is. Prue is over a year older, and that irritates him right now, along with her defiant dancing and her pregnancy and all these blacks and queers she's not afraid of. "So I really should put in my half," she is explaining, "even though he makes twice what I do. His parents and my mother loaned us the down payment equally, though I know she couldn't afford it. Next year, if I can get a part-time job somewhere, I want to begin nurses' training. Those RNs make a fortune doing just what I'm doing now, except they're allowed to give injections." "Jesus, you want to spend your whole life around sick people?" "I like taking care of things. On the farm, until my father died, there were always animals. I used to shear my own sheep even." "Huh." Nelson has always been allergic to animals. "Do you dance, Nelson?" she asks him. "No, I sit and drink beer and feel sorry for myself." Prue is bouncing around now with a Puerto Rican or something. Manny has a couple of them working for him in the shop now. He doesn't know what disease they get as kids, but their cheeks have worse than pox, like little hollow cuts all over. "Jamie won't dance either." "Ask one of the fairies, or just go do it by yourself. Somebody'll pick you up." "I love to dance." "Why do you feel sorry for yourself?" "Oh, my father's a prick." He doesn't know why this popped out of his mouth. Something about the goody-goody way in which the girl speaks of her own parents. But in thinking of his father, what strikes Nelson about the large, bland face that appears to his inner eye is a mournful helplessness. His father's face bloats like an out-of-focus close-up in some war movie in the scramble of battle before floating away. Big and white and vague, as on that day when he held him on his lap, when the world was too much for the two of them. "You shouldn't say that," the girl says, and stands. Luminous, long legs. Her thighs make a kind of lap even when she stands. Her pink-rimmed bare feet, sunk in the shag rug so close nearly kill him. They are so sexy. What did she say that for? Making him feel guilty and scolded. Her own father is dead. She makes him feel he's killed his. She can go fuck. She goes and dances, standing shy along the wall for a minute and then moving in, loosening. He doesn't want to watch and get envious. He heaves himself up to get another beer and steal another look at the girl in the kitchen. Sad, tits by themselves, on a woman sitting up. Little half-filled purses. Jamie's face and hands are broad and scraped-looking, and he has loosened his tie to let his bull neck breathe. Another girl is reading his palm. They are all sitting around a little porcelain kitchen table, with spots worn black where place settings were, that Nelson feels he knows from long ago. A poster in here is of Marlon Brando in the black leather get-up of the Wild One. Another shows Alice Cooper with his green eyelids and long fingernails. The refrigerator, with its cool shelves of yogurt in paper cups, and beer in sharply lettered six-packs seems an island of decent order amid all this. Nelson is reminded of the lot, its rows of new Toyotas, and his stomach sinks. Sometimes at the lot, standing in the showroom with no customers in sight, he feels returned to him from childhood that old fear of being in the wrong place, of life being run by rules nobody would share with him. He returns to the big front room with its fake ceiling and thinks that Prue looks ridiculously older than the other dancers. A little frizzy-haired girl called Dodie Weinstein interning in teen fashions at Kroll's, and Slim and this Lyle in the soccer shirt back together again, and Pam, their hostess, in a big floppy moo-moo her body is having fits within, while the wan lights of Brewer fall away beyond the bay window, and the girl without a name waits in her white pants to be picked up while she stands to one side, shivering from side to side in time to the music. One night in a lifetime, one life in a night. She looks a little self-conscious, but happy to be here, out of the sticks. The black bubbles in the speakers pop faster and faster, and his wife with her cannonball gut is about to fall flat on her face. He goes to Prue and pulls her by her wrist away. Her spick thug of a partner deadpan writhes to the girl in white pants and picks her up. "Babe, it's gotta be tonight. Babe, it's gotta be tonight." Nelson is squeezing Prue's wrist to hurt. She is unsteady, pulled out of the music, and this further angers him, his wife getting tipsy. Defective equipment, breaking down on purpose just to show him up. Her brittle imbalance makes him want to smash her completely. "You're hurting me," she says. Her voice arrives, tiny and dry, from a little box suspended in air behind his ear. As she tries to pull her wrist away, her bangles pinch his fingers, and this is infuriating. He wants to get her somewhere out of this. He pulls her across a hallway looking for a wall to prop her up against. He finds one in a small side room. The light switch plate beside her shoulder has been painted like an open-mouthed face with an off-on tongue. He puts his own face up against Prue's and hisses, "Listen, you shape up for Christ's sake. You're going to hurt yourself if you don't shape up. And the baby, what are you trying to do, shake him loose? Now you calm down." "I am calm. You're the one that's not calm, Nelson." Their eyes are so close, her eyes threaten to swallow his with their blurred green. "And who says it's going to be a him?" Prue gives him her lopsided smirk. Her lips are painted vampire red in the new style, and it's not becoming. It emphasizes her hatchet face, her dead calm, bloodless look. That blank defiance of the poor. You can't scare them enough. He pleads, "You shouldn't be drinking and smoking pot at all. You'll cause genetic damage. You know that." She forms her words in response slowly. "Nelson, you don't give a shit about genetic damage." "You silly bitch, I do. Of course I do. It's my kid. Or is it? You Akron kids'll fuck anybody." They are in a strange room. Flamingos surround them. Whoever lives in this side room with its view of the brick wall across two narrow side yards, initially intended for a servant probably, has collected flamingos as a kind of joke. A glossy pink stuffed satin one drapes its ridiculous long black legs over the back of the sofa bed, and hollow plastic ones with stick legs are propped along the walls on shelves. There are flamingos worked into ashtrays and coffee mugs, and there are little 3D tableaus of the painted pink birds with lakes and palms and sunsets, souvenirs of Florida. For one souvenir, a trio of them were gathered in knickers and Scots caps on a felt putting green. Some of the bigger ones wear on their hollow, drooping beaks those limp, candy-like sunglasses you can get in 5 and dimes. There are hundreds. Other gays must give them to him. It has to be Slim who lives in here. That sofa bed wouldn't be enough for Jason and Pam. "It is," Prue promises. "You know it is." "I don't know. You're acting awfully hoary tonight." "I didn't want to come, remember. You're the one always wants to go out." He begins to cry. Something about Prue's face, that toughness out of Akron, closed against him, her belly bumping his, that big doll-like body he used to love so much, that she might just as easily have entrusted to another its clefts, its tufts, and might just as easily take from him now. He is nothing to her. All their tender times, picking her up on the hill, and walking under the trees, and the bars along Water Street, and his going ahead and letting her out there in Colorado make such a sucker of him while he stewed in Diamond County, nothing. He is nothing to her, like he was nothing to Jill, a brat, a bug to be humored, and look what happened. Love feels riddled through all his body like rot, down clear to his knees, spongy as punk. "You'll do damage to yourself," he sobs. Tears add their glitter to the green of her dress at the shoulder, yet his own crumpled face hangs as clear in the back of his brain as a face on a TV screen. "You're strange," Prue tells him, her voice breathier now, a whispery rag stuffed in his ear. "Let's get out of this creepy place. That girl you were talking to, what did she say?" "Nothing. Her boyfriend makes bug killers." "You talked together a long time." "She wanted to dance." "I could see you pointing and looking at me. You're ashamed of my being pregnant." "I'm not. I'm proud." "The fuck you are, Nelson. You're embarrassed." "Don't be so hard. Come on, let's split." "See, you are embarrassed. That's all this baby is to you, an embarrassment." "Please come. What are you trying to do, make me get down on my knees?" "Listen, Nelson, I was having a perfectly good time dancing, and you come out and pull this big macho act. My wrist still hurts. Maybe you broke it." He tries to lift her wrist to kiss it, but she stiffly resists. At times she seems to him, body and soul, a board, flat, with that same abrasive grain. And then the fear comes upon him that this flatness is her, that she is not withholding depths within, but there are no depths. This is what there is. She gets on a track sometimes, and it seems she can't stop. His pulling at her wrist again, only to kiss it, but she doesn't want to see that, has made her altogether mad, her face all pink and pointy and rigid. "You know what you are," she tells him. "You're a little Napoleon. You're a twerp, Nelson. Hey, don't." The space around her vampire lips is tight, and her voice is a dead-level engine that won't stop. "I didn't really know you. I've been watching how you act with your family, and you're very spoiled. You're spoiled, and you're a bully, Nelson." "Shut up." He mustn't cry again. "I was never spoiled, just the opposite. You don't know what my family did to me." "I've heard about it 1,000 times, and to me it never sounded like any big deal. You expect your mother and poor old grandmother to take care of you no matter what you do. You're horrid about your father when all he wants is to love you, to have a halfway normal son. He didn't want me to work at the lot. He didn't think you were ready, and you weren't. You aren't. You weren't ready to be a father either, but that's my mistake." "Oh, even you make mistakes." The green she is wearing is a hateful color, shimmery electric arsenic, like a big fat black hooker would wear to get attention on the street. He turns his eyes away and sees over on a bureau top some bendable toy flamingos have been arranged in a copulating position, one on top of the other's back, and another pair in what he supposes is a blowjob, but the droopy beaks spoil the effect. "I make plenty," Prue is going on. "Why wouldn't I? Nobody has ever taught me anything. But I'll tell you one thing, Nelson Angstrom, I'm going to have this baby no matter what you do. You can go to hell." "I can, huh?" "Yes." She has to weaken it. Her very belly seems to soften against his, nestling. "I don't want you to, but you can. I can't stop you, and you can't stop me. We're two people, even if we did get married. You never wanted to marry me, and I shouldn't have let you, it turns out." "I did, though, I did," he says, fearful that confessing this will make his face crumple again. "Then stop being a bully. You bullied me to come here, and now you're bullying me to go. I like these people. They have better senses of humor than the people in Ohio." "Let's stay, then." There are things other than flamingos in the room. hideous things he sees.